Hello everyone, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program, episode 3 of our SSTO space program, a series where we try to lower the costs of space exploration by using SSTOs or going fully reusable. Last time, we've picked enough science from our moon flyby to unlock new exciting technologies that will allow us to build our first proper SSTO spaceplane. So let's jump right into it. This is going to be a low-orbit SSTO with 3-ton capacity that we will use to deploy small satellites and rescue Kerbals from low-carbon orbit. The most important parts you will need to build this SSTO, apart from Mark II cockpit and fuselage parts, are Panther engines. Since these engines are not going to give us anywhere near the velocity as ramjets, for example, we will need a lot more rocket fuel to get to orbit. For this SSTO, one short liquid fuel tank is enough, but we will need 5 medium and 2 long rocket fuel tanks as well. As for engines, 4 Panther engines and 2 swivels are the setup I decided to use. As usual, make sure that your center of mass is always in front of your center of lift, otherwise your vessel will be unstable. I'm also adding an antenna and solar panels to keep our brave Kerbals powered up and connected to KSP at all times. Once we are sure that we are not going to run out of power, it's time to load a test satellite and launch this baby into orbit. Let's see how it goes. Or actually, before we do that, let's pick some contracts for satellite deployment as well as some basic science recovery from the orbit. As you can see, there's quite a few of them, so this ship we've just built is going to be quite useful. I think we're ready to launch now. Our satellite in the cargo bay with, I hope, all the components that we need, so let's go. We have a lot of thrust, so the flight profile is pretty simple. Just pitch up to about 15 degrees, sit back and relax. As you can see, we're picking up speed pretty quickly. Joe and Bob are very focused on the mission on hand, and everything is going smoothly so far. At about 16 km altitude, we'll be firing up our rocket engines, so make sure your angle of attack is about 20 degrees before you do so, otherwise getting into orbit might be a bit tricky. And it looks like we've made it to space. Now we just need to circularize our orbit, and this SSTO is going nowhere. Well, unless we wanted to, that is. We still have quite a lot of fuel left, so getting back to KSP should not be a problem. But first, let's deploy the satellite and put it on the correct orbit, so we can get paid. I wanted this to be a small relay satellite, and since the contract required us to put it on a geostationary orbit, I thought it's a perfect match. I made, however, a big mistake that made the whole network pretty much useless, but more on that later. We need about 1000 delta V to get to geostationary orbit from a low carbon orbit, and this satellite has more than enough, so getting there was not an issue. It got there just fine. After we circularized our orbit, we still have some fuel left, and our connection to KSP is good. This means that we can sit back and enjoy the view for a moment. Now, before we go any further, it's time we landed our SSTO back at KSP. We have a little bit of fuel left, so deorbiting it should not be a problem. I am however concerned with the ship's stability. I decided to pump the fuel that was left to front tanks, just to be on the safe side. As you can see, my concerns were unfounded, at least in this flight, and our SSTO re-entered just fine and was pretty stable. It all went quite smoothly in the end, so I completed our comm network by launching 3 more satellites the same way and placing them at 90-degree angle in respect to each other. With our comm network finished, it was time to repair our budget a little bit. So I built this highly maneuverable high altitude plane and used it to do all the high altitude contracts that I could find. That gave us in total about 200,000 Kerbal dollars. It was overall a pretty successful plane, I must say. Once this was done, an orbital rescue mission was available, and since we already had a great SSTO that was up for the task, there was no reason not to take it. Plus, we would get another cabin out for our crew, and this is always good. As you can see, I decided to load a little bit of extra fuel to get more Delta V for orbital maneuvers. The flight profile was pretty much the same, and Alka Kerman was back on Kerbin in pretty much no time. With Alka safely back on the ground, it was time to finally move on to a more interesting mission. This time, we're sending a manned mission to the surface of the moon, but for that, we needed a new ship. We can't build an SSTO that could go directly from Kerbin and land on the moon yet, so I decided to make a space shuttle-like system with an SSTO launch vehicle. It was still quite a challenge to make a spaceplane that would have more than 3000 meters per second Delta V to safely land on the moon and get back to Kerbin. The ship would carry a bunch of science experiments and had cargo capacity of 1 ton, so it could probably carry a small rover as well. But the wheels were not researched yet, so... The launch vehicle, however, would need around 3500 meters per second and a decent thrust-to-weight ratio, which was even more challenging since we still have part size and mass limit on our ships. Balancing the thrust output was really hard, and this ship is not easy to fly. I'm not sure if I ever want to use it again. Nevertheless, it did its job and delivered our shuttle into orbit in one piece. Once the shuttle separated and deployed the antenna, it was time to land the launch vehicle. It has very limited power and could not remain in orbit for long. For extra difficulty, I was playing with plasma blackouts and no control over probes that aren't connected to KSP, and that wasn't working with this setup. To safely re-enter the launch vehicle, I had to disable plasma blackout, which is another reason to improve the current design. It was quite difficult to re-enter, and you can see me spinning it to distribute the heat more evenly. We have lost something nevertheless, and I don't even know what it was. Probably something we didn't need anyway. I have managed to gracefully fall down close to KSP and land in the ocean, but a small boost from the engines was also needed to soften the landing. Once this was done, we could move on to our shuttle and start the burn for moon transfer. There's really nothing special to tell about it. The thrust-to-weight ratio is pretty good and the burn was done in one run, and we have some excess Delta V, so we don't really need to worry about precision too much. This was the point where I realized the mistake I did with the comm network. The antennas we have access to can barely maintain connection between the satellites, which means they will be pretty useless if we ever want to venture further out in the Kerbal system. It was a big mistake to build the comm network at this point, and I'm the only one to blame for it, because I didn't take the time to actually figure out what the coverage range would be, but we might be able to fix this later. For now, our voyage was pretty uneventful, and since this is our first moon landing, there was no preference as to where we should land. I decided to choose Midlands as our landing location. Most of the science experiments that could have been done in or from orbit were already done during our flyby mission, at least for this particular biome. We continued with our descent, and as you can see, we still have quite a lot of fuel left, so I wasn't worried too much about the efficiency. The thrust to weight ratio on this ship is quite good and it was easy to slow down and eventually land. The only downside was the absolute lack of RCS. Once we've landed, a memorial flag was placed and Jeb and Bob started collecting science from the numerous experiments we've brought with us. For some of them, like the material study or mystery goo, 2 samples were needed, and that is why we also had an experiment storage unit in the cargo bay. After collecting all of the available science from the surface, our crew was ready to go back to Kerbal. Again, we had more than enough fuel to inject ourselves into a transfer orbit, and the voyage was pretty uneventful. So I guess I should let you enjoy the music for a while without me talking. A standard aerobraking altitude I use for my space planes is between 50 to 55 kilometers, and this mission was no exception. Jebediah was able to easily circularize the orbit in 2 or so passes and then deorbit the shuttle and land back at the KSP. This mission was a success, and even if the ship itself has a lot of flaws, it could probably let us explore Mun and Minmus, and we're pretty much equipped to send unmanned missions to Duna as well. This brings me to another question I have for you guys. At this point we have almost no challenges left. Getting extra science until we eventually unlock nuclear engines and rapiers is just a matter of time. But what if we made things a little bit harder and added a life support mod or some sort of colony building mods as well? Let me know what you think about this idea, and also let me know if you like this new style more than the subtitles that I usually use. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!